How's how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of AngelsBobs Plus here in Factorio, episode 78. Hope you guys have been enjoying the series so far. If you guys have, make sure you guys leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as it really does help out the channel. Other than that, let's get right into today's episode. So in the last episode, we went ahead and we started kind of fixing our copper problem, because that's really our main issue right now, holding us back. We also have a few other issues, but these are also directly related to the copper. Well, they're indirectly related to the copper issue. Part of it's we're just not getting enough ore, part of it's just not enough production capacity of things, but that's part and due to some secondary items that we're producing. So the main thing is we took a look at trying to upgrade, well, not really upgrade, but just increase slash fix the output here of the Javolite. And so we're still kind of waiting for this to process through a bunch. I waited around for a while and it's still just slowly backing up, but it's just going to take some time. So in the meantime, I thought it would be a good idea to start looking at solar. So I know we briefly touched on it, but we haven't set anything up yet. So the reason we're doing solar and not just sticking with the steam engines here and expanding to the third cell, if you will, or, you know, third set, or even just straight up upgrading, because in modded you do have access to more steam engine or like higher tiers along with higher boilers. So for the same exact footprint in terms of area here, you increase your power output. Well, the reason you want to do solar is normally if you're playing, you have pollution, you have biters, but because I don't have biters for a reason I just have not figured out why. Somewhere they're turned off. Yeah, I don't know how. When I spawned the world, it showed biters would spawn. They never showed up, so I'm whatever. We're playing without biters, which is fine. But normally you would have pollution like this. When you turn on the pollution map mode, you have this blob of red, and if biters are within this blob of red, they consume a little bit of it and spawn more biters, and will, you know, occasionally send an attack at you. And if you're playing with a mod like Rampant AI, which I highly recommend, I love it. It makes the defense aspect that much more integral. You can't just choke point turrets, call it good. No. You have to actively make sure that your defense is good and solid, because the biters will actively, or at least with Rampant AI turned on, they will, and that's a mod, they will actively attack and probe your defense. And also it's really, really good. I highly recommend the mod. But just for standard purposes, when you have all this pollution, biters are going to attack you, which is going to cause, you know, lag in of itself. The pollution doing its thing with all the biters is going to cause lag. And as you get a massive factory, even bigger than what we have now, which already is a really big factory, as you've seen, it takes a while to drive from one corner to the other, even in a car, let alone walking, of course, takes a while. But once you start to get much bigger factories and start to, you know, encroach on the mega base territory, and then especially for this, I would say like a mega factory when you're doing AngelsBobs and all that, you definitely start to get into very, very large territory in terms of a base footprint. So you start to lag, and unfortunately Factorio, as great as it is, you will start to notice, and we've kind of seen it a little bit, a drawback on the FPS and the UPS. FPS, as most people know, is frames per second. Well, UPS is updates per second, and updates per second are, for instance, when you have a belt, well, the game has to calculate this animation of it moving, so it has to calculate the distance from this plate to this set of plates. Well, conveniently, when you have a full belt, for instance, this iron, while it's not moving, or really any of the belts that are full, and fully compressed as well, and in this case, none of them are, well, they're kind of moving, but when it's full like this, it's counted as one item, or like one entity, right? So when it moves, well, all of it's moving at once, so there's no like space calculation, and so it counts as one item. While when you have a bunch of spaces like this, for instance, this aluminum isn't great. It's actually probably the worst, or one of the worst things for the UPS is because it has to calculate all these distances between all of these plates, and it's constantly moving, which is constant updates. And so you want to try to eventually, especially when you're doing mega bases, and because really that's what you're working against is the FPS and the UPS, and that's why you try to figure out builds that are based on a single belt of input, right? So some people will do like, oh, I want to do a rocket per minute, or I want to do so many science packs per minute or per second. Well, oftentimes when they do those calculations, they do it based off the number of input belts to output belts. They're not counting in specific, oh, I want 20 iron in and 20 iron out. No. They look at, I want one yellow belt in and one yellow belt out. And that's oftentimes what you'll hear people do when they're doing mega bases. That's why for a while, bot-based builds were a major plus to using bots, is because bots, coincidentally, although they were individual entities, they caused a lot less calculations than belts would, because belts are unpredictable, right? Because when you have curves, it decompresses the belt. When you take off of the belt, it decompresses the belt. And so you're introducing all these different variables, but at least with bots, you could put into a chest, take out of the chest, put into another chest, take out of the chest, put into the machine. And so there would be a lot less updates. Well, Factorio has come a long way since those days. They have very much optimized the belts. So now you can do belt-based builds, say that 10 times fast, in the late game. And especially even at the mega base level. However, Steam, coincidentally, because, you have this animation of the steam, you have usually a pretty constant input, so you also have this belt of coal or solid fuel, depending on, or whatever fuel source you're using, that has to constantly update. You have these inserters, so you have this is one of the largest sinks of UPS, and especially when you're playing with biters, it's another major UPS draw. Now, when you're not playing with biters, you can stay on Steam much longer because you're not triggering biter attacks, which is inadvertently lowering your UPS. But notice, even just being over this, it does dip a little bit more than when we're over other areas of the factory. Not by much. Only like maybe a frame or two here and there. But it is still UPS intensive. So the reason you do solar is so just another quick side note, though, on the Steam is, so all of these are individual entities, so all the Steam engines and all their animations, separate entities. However, with solar, it counts as one entire, it doesn't matter how many solar panels and accumulators you have on the map, it counts as one entity. So you can have these massive grids that, will span a massive corner of the map. It counts as one entity, so it's a much better use of your UPS. And again, when you're trying to just squeeze every frame and every update per second out of your factory, it matters. And that's something you'll see in mega bases, and you'll even see it in normal bases as well. But usually it's not so much for the frames as much as it is just for the pollution against the biters, which, inadvertently does affect your frames. But if a player's trying to, cut down on the amount of attacks they have, they'll switch over to that. So what I usually like to do when I'm doing solar is I look for, because you need a large area, right? It's a commitment. You need, where's an area that is open and that isn't going to have stuff on it, per se. Well, what I look for is I look for sections of the map that either don't have any ore, so like up here, kind of this little nook between some ore patches, or what I like to do, especially here in modded, and because I know I'm going to have train networks, I'm going to have a bunch of other things, is I like to look for lakes, and then what I'll do is I'll landfill it in, because I know there won't be any ore there. And I know, especially when you play with bigger lakes like I do, you can guarantee that, okay, you can put a solar array here, and that there won't be any issues with building in that area. And you don't need to build them all in one area, so you can build some of them here, on this lake, you can build some of them over here, maybe build some in the north. So you don't, Steam, also don't have to do that with Steam, but it makes more sense to do it with Steam, because, well, you're already going to have the fuel lines, you're probably already building by a section of water, So you more than likely, yes, are going to build all of your steam in one area. Do you have to? Technically, no, but it just makes it more efficient. Whereas with solar, you just really need it to be somewhere, and you can just connect it with power. You can even build it way, way off over here, you know, somewhere in an undiscovered part of the map, and then just power it with long distance power poles, and it will work just fine. So now the next portion that we'll look at. So I'm going to build on this lake here. Well, let's expand our boat brush. So in vanilla, you have accumulators and you have solar panels. Same thing here in modded. There are some other options as well. You'll also have, at least with what I, oh, geez, that really used all of that land. I need a lot more landfill. So I'm going to go grab more while we cover over some things. Alright. Without crashing into anything. What is supposed to be in this? Oh, fish water. Now I lost my train of thought. Solar panels. So yeah, so in modded you know you can have multiple tiers of solar panels. So there's small, medium, and large. We briefly covered them. So they are bigger. So like the small ones are physically smaller than the medium are physically smaller than large. They also require less materials, but they also produce less power. I just stick to the mediums because I have found that it just ends up being the best bang for the buck. However, it doesn't... Oh, we'll just grab as much landfill as we can hold. It doesn't really like matter necessarily. Like if you want to build a mixed build with all three, go for it. I don't plan on using one. I might explore an option with it. And of course there are multiple tiers as well, so there's not just a small, medium, large, but there's also a tier 2, which is, you know, as you can see, a medium tier 2 is 90 kilowatts, and a medium tier 1 is only 60, so you gain basically a 50% increase in power, which is good. But it's honestly one of those things. Solar especially, like steam I could see upgrading, right, because you don't have that much. But when you eventually have 10, 20, 30,000 solar panels on the ground, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to pick up all of those solar panels. I mean, you could probably do it with robots, but it would still take you quite some time to do. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to really upgrade them, unfortunately. So I don't think it's something I'll do, but it depends on the player and again their setup. They might have a more robust robot network. They might integrate robots into their solar arrays, and we'll take a look at some of that once I get an area filled in for us to use. Then of course we'll have to drag some power poles over here. So the size of the array, players will do different sizes. So what some people will do is you'll kind of have your spaghetti array where you'll just throw them down at pretty much anywhere you have power poles. More organized way of going about it is using substations, which I highly, highly recommend. So this is kind of the standard layout that I'll use. Is this one. This uses 272, and you can see that over here. And there is a ratio. I don't know the ratio off the top of my head. Every time I look for it, I either find different numbers. Some people recommend, I think it's 15 solar to like 11 point something accumulator. It's, I don't know, there's a lot of different math out there on it. You can definitely go look for it on the forums. There's some on... There's a lot of, like, technical math behind it. I have used this build before. It's pretty standard, and it's pretty tileable. Tileable? Words and me do not agree, but you can place it down over and over again. It makes it nice. And so, for instance, you place it here, and then you build another one right here, and you build another one right here, another one right here. Now, I don't have any lights built in. I also don't have any RoboPorts built in. However, if you want, you could always make a bigger one. Say, take these two out, put in a RoboPort here. I don't think I have any on me. Maybe. Nope. You know, you put one here. You could even carve out a path if you want to be able to access these. Kind of like this. Basically put down a RoboPort here and connect it like that. Those do exist. So again, it just... comes down to, you know, personal preference. And then this is what I like to call a very large build. It's a little bit less tileable. However, it is still, I think, good. You can still place one and then place another one next to it. As you can see, there's a much larger percentage of accumulators to solar panels. Not quite 1-to-1, but still very high. And we should take note that these are the high capacity accumulators from Modded. There are different tiers of those as well. There's actually take a look at those really fast. There's fast charging ones, which as the name implies, they're going to charge really, really quickly, but they don't have as much capacity. There's high capacity, so they're going to charge a little bit slower, but they have a much larger capacity. And then there's slow, which basically means they have a lot more, well, they have the same energy capacity. What do slow have over them? They're just slower. They're, honestly, I don't know. I don't know why you would build slow. I don't see a reason to. Honestly, if you're gonna build, yeah, I just recommend build high capacity. It saves you on green circuits. That's just me. That's just me. And there are, of course, the vanilla ones in here as well, which are just 5 batteries to this, which are half the size of the high capacitor. So you could build the vanilla ones as well to save a little bit on some iron. You save 1 iron. Actually, no. Doesn't make sense to. Just build the high capacity. They're all around better because you actually save an iron, right? Because, and technically some tileage as well. Yeah, high capacity all the way. I don't see a reason to do fast or the slow. I really don't see a reason to do slow. Fast, maybe, but really even then I don't see one. The day cycles are plenty. Maybe if you're playing with a mod that, say, makes it dark really quickly, or dark most of the time, then, you know, I suppose, and at least if you're using solar, but if you're playing with that, you're probably not using solar. I recommend high capacity and just the medium. There are some stats out there as to do one over the other. So we can do this massive array, and as you can see on the map, it doesn't, we can't even see all of it. It's that big. This one is so big, I have it including radars in all 4 corners. And of course, this is something you can throw RoboPorts in and all sorts of things. It doesn't really matter where we place it. We can go ahead and place it like this. So it's going to have a bunch. So we're going to build in the top of the left corner just to make sure that we can visually be able to even see all of it. And now we'll let the nanobots do their thing. And so as you can see, each area basically is a substation that are directly connected. And so we place another substation there to connect long range. We can also place, I don't know if we have any on us. Let's go to make a bunch. And so what happens is, so when they're charging, so the solar panels themselves act as one entity, right? There's no moving parts, there's no animation of the solar panel. So they're all one entity. And that's how any item in the game works. If there's one, or rather, if there's no animation of it, it counts as one thing. Now, the accumulators, fondly enough, you would think, oh, but doesn't each one have its own cycle of charging and all these? They do, but they also act as one thing, like one entity, like one giant battery bank. So it makes solar, again, very, very UPS friendly. It's the reason people use it for, well, literally just about everything. We don't have enough to fully build this. We have enough accumulators and substations, but we don't have enough solar. But we will try to get as many places as we can. So, this is, you know, the basic premises is very large installations of solar that generate a lot of power. This whole array, I believe, power generates about 131 megawatts is I think what it maths out to. Each panel generates 60 kilowatts, and there's 3.1 thousand. Well, not currently, but there will be. We can actually even click here to see that it's already able to generate 6 point. So, solar does have a pretty good part of a factory in Factorio. And yeah, sure, it's not just for the pollution part, but it is for the, you know, the UPS and the FPS primarily. It's one of those, like, yes, you use it to curb down your pollution because the boilers are a big producer of your pollution. If we look here at our pollution map, I mean, now it's been a while, so it's built up with no real contention, but most of it originates from here at the power, and you can kind of see that by just this. However, most every machine produces some level of pollution. It's just boilers are going to produce the most. And then, well, we cut through some trees real fast. But yeah, I mean, solar, very generous to your FPS, your UPS. That's why you're going to see Megabase builds use it. Oh, mainly over the fact that, yes, it is good for when you're playing against biters, but if you're building a Megabase, 9 times out of 10 you're not, because it eats up resources for the defense, and it also causes more lag because biters, unfortunately, every time that they launch an attack, they load in a chunk. Technically, radars, to an extent, also cause lag, because they have to load in a chunk, and if there's biters, especially active biters and an active chunk, as it's called, will cause updates. Has to determine, okay, is it time to do an attack, and then a bunch of other things. Is it still not attached? I see it's still not attached. There we go. So now we have even more power. And so the reason that the grid isn't max at 177 is because it needs to charge the accumulators, which will be max is 8.8 gigajoules. I will say one thing I'm not happy about is, so I get that energy is stored in one unit and the active use of energy is another unit. I just wish the game would, for the sake of just consistency, just say, hey, look, here's how many megawatts of stored energy you have, or here's how many gigawatts of energy you have. Instead, unless you know the conversion of joules to megawatts, you're kind of in the dark. But yeah. But as you can see here, you can see how much it inputs and outputs is in kilowatts, but the storage is in megajoules. But again, joules to watts, it's a conversion. If you don't know what it is, you can just go look it up. It's a very, I don't know, it's a nice thing to, you know, kind of have some of that factual part to Factorio. However, it's not nice to, if you don't know what it is, to try to convert it. I just wish it was standard, but it's fine. Hey, is more copper? Oh, let me turn that off. More copper flying? No, I'm just being deceived by that. Alright, let's double check to see if things caught up. The answer is no. Maybe. Well, that looks more full than what it was at the beginning of the episode. So I think we're definitely getting there. We need to fix some more issues. Let's head over there. Go fix let's see, there's a couple splitters we need to fix here. If there are any questions about solar or any of that, just leave that down below. We'll definitely try to cover it as best we can, or rather as best I can. There's definitely a lot to it, but at the same time it's, I don't know, I think it's just one of those things that a player does once. Like, they might look at the math behind it, the reasoning behind a lot of it once. Probably the same reason they do a lot of them, and then just copy and paste them in every build, and then before you know it, you forgot why the build was built a certain way or ratioed a certain way, and then, you know, it's unfortunate, but I try to cover as much as I can. Alright, so it looks like that's fixed. Oh, let's pick up my car before I forget. So in order to increase copper truly, we need more steertite, and we could also open up chromium? Chromatium? What is it called? It's crotinium. Alright. Well, I think that's where we're going to call it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, make sure you guys do like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys did, then thank you very much, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.